every mayoral election in London until this time had a major national figure of some charisma and standing. Boris or Ken, or on occasions Ken and Boris.
We work with what we're given, and these are the politicians we were given who perhaps weren't as distinctive as others and perhaps didn't have massive differences in some of their policies.
The danger is by that you get so far into a campaign, you know what they're going to say.
Sadiq particularly is an incredibly slick politician, and he will tell you about his plan and the fact he was son of a bus driver, and and he just repeats the same things again and again. He was extremely effective. So we deliberately wanted to see a kind of the character side of them.
There is an element of here's a viewer's guide to this person, but obviously you're trying to look for the things to spike them as well.
Just getting the kind of general interest level up with our viewers was challenging.
It was genuinely difficult.
At the start of the campaign, we all slightly scratched our heads and thought, what sort of a campaign is this going to be? Is it going to be desperately dull because we don't have Boris or Ken? And by the end, it was a legitimate lead news story every night.
It was quite an old-fashioned TV election.
It was pleasantly surprising. We wanted to demonstrate that we could do London politics, do it well and do it properly. We chose particular topics, trying to explain what the Mayor actually does. When we had the longer questioning sessions, we were able to put clips out there to try and generate interest, try and drive audience figures and audience eyeballs to the linear channel.
We had to kind of think about ways that we could inject interest in terms of the kind of television techniques and different ways of debates and lives and different studios, and just kind of throwing all the production techniques at it. We kind of did obviously the big set-piece interviews, a one-off programme with the five of them. We did this one where, we did the style is shamelessly stolen from The Apprentice style interview, where we deliberately didn't ask them about policies.
We did a whole series with some interesting characters around London saying, if I were mayor, what I would do to try and bring in a bit of real London and more diversity of the sorts of people who were talking. And we did some polling, which then gave us some interesting stuff around issues that people wanted. One of our polls put Sadiq way ahead, as all the polls were doing, but we asked if Boris were standing, who would you vote for? And more people would have voted for Boris. So if Boris had been standing, he would have beaten Sadiq.
We made bespoke content for Facebook. We're constantly reviewing and getting better at how we do social media stuff. Nothing election-wise really took off. The one thing that did was afterwards, when we put up a profile of Sadiq Khan and his acceptance speech, they did very well. The Ken comment did very well, the Nazi kind of row. It's the moments of great conflict or something out of the ordinary, unexpected, is always going to be the thing that drives the traffic.
Most interesting things that we did actually when we covered the two debates. We put clips out whilst it was going on out on social media, so people, even if they weren't watching the channel, could see some key points. More people tweeting than watching the programme. I think it was obviously interesting, and if that was the case, then that was quite an interesting phenomenon to maybe have achieved.
Ofcom had decreed for the commercial broadcasters that you had to give equal time to 5 main parties, not 3.
Not quite equal time.
Due weight.
Okay, due weight. But they were named. That caused problems?
This was such a challenge on so many levels. On the most basic one, logistics. So we all have smaller teams than perhaps we would like to have, and getting around London to get 5 interviews is really hard. There
were times during the coverage when we would do just Labour and Conservative candidates, and other times we would do all 5, and sometimes we would do the other 3. We often ended up doing pieces about the campaign as opposed to the issues, because it's pretty hard to go into a big issue in a lot of detail if you've got 5 people commenting. It just meant so much of the coverage was dominated by these 5.
My position is probably easier to have dealt with this than my 2 colleagues here, because of the amount of news programming we have on the channel. So obviously we do 5 hours of news a day in a rolling format, so therefore it's much easier to balance off. If you're looking to balance off across the totality of your news output, it's a much easier thing to do because there's a lot more of it. We kept a very careful running score to make sure that we were keeping things level.
There's no point making rules for things you have to do legally if you're so constrained that the television you end up making is that which people do not want to watch, because in that case, democracy isn't served. A reasonable desire to make a television that is going to be attractive and going to get viewers needs to be taken on board by all those who make the decisions.